Hey everyone out there, it's Seth with Jenson USA coming to you with another Kendall versus Kendall with my amazing partner here, Jeff Kendall Weed. And we are actually cranking out a couple of quick episodes here because we had a bit of a slow start to 2020. And, you know, between crazy amounts of videos and like all this nuttiness with COVID, like we kind of got held up. But now that we are a little bit less busy with some of these other things, we're able to crank out several episodes. So we had a really cool one that we dropped just a little while ago on hardtails and single speeds. And you actually have a couple of cool videos on your Cro-Mag. So definitely worth checking out those to check out what Jeff is doing with his hardtail setup and just how hard he can shred on that thing, which is very, very hard.
It's hard on your back. I don't know about how technically hard it is.
I don't know. I'm always impressed. So that is one thing, like not to get way segued before we get into our episode today, but I did love my single speed and hardtails, but I did always find that if I got fatigued and tired, I would often migrate back to my full squishes just to let my body recover.
Yeah.
So. All right, Jeff, what are we talking about today?
Today's podcast is all about the world of kids' bikes, and we're going to cover everything from riding mountain bikes with your kid to getting your kid their first bike and the progression from 9-inch or so wheels, maybe even smaller, all the way up to, I don't know, can we call 26-inch wheel kids' bikes, or is that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's the new realm of 26.
Yeah, totally. I've seen some pretty young kids, like 12 or so, maybe even younger than that, on 26-inch lately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, before we jump into this, just before I was about to record this podcast with you, I was on the phone with my brother, and obviously he is a Kendall as well.
Yep.
And he said, you know, I'm really excited to listen to your new episodes of Kendall versus Kendall. I'm rooting for Kendall. And
I love it.
I jokingly told him, well, the other guy's name is Kendall Weed, so you got to pick which one you're more in favor of. And then I thought, I actually don't know whether Jeff is, because I'm assuming this is a hyphenation between your wife and you.
No. My wife
correct,
took my hyphenated last name. So when my parents got married, you know, they're aging hippies. My mom didn't want to take my dad's last name. She wanted to maintain her own maiden name. So they were like, no worries, we'll just call the school and see if any kids have a hyphenated last name. And sure enough, there was a kid right then and there in the principal's office getting to talking to who had a hyphenated last name, and they assumed that meant it was completely easy, no problems at all, and problem solved, kids to get hyphenated names. And that's how it started.
All right, so dad is Kendall or mom is dad is Weed.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I wonder if there's some heritage where we overlap.
There could easily
somewhere.
be. My mom's side of the family directly comes down from the Queen of England or something like that. And they have a bunch of family was in the the Revolutionary War. So we have ancestors in the States starting in the 1700s from England.
Interesting. Yeah. We have a pretty in-depth history on our side. We actually have a book that was created from family members from like old war letters through several different wars and stuff, but it was at the time the Latta letters is what the book's called, but it was a series of letters between the family that ultimately like carried over this Kendall heritage. So I'm really bad at history and all that kind of stuff, but if you were to ask my mom, she's like all dialed on that stuff.
I think as we get older, we'll get more interested in it.
Probably, and with more time on my hands and less time for me at least currently because trails are closed.
That's
riding.
right.
I should probably dig in. So, but we're not here to talk about history. We're here to talk about the future, and the future of bikes is kids on bikes. So let's talk about that. Jeff, how old is your daughter?
Our daughter was born November 2016, which makes her about 3.5 now. And you've got two kiddos.
Yeah, we've got two. I've got Ethan, or as we call him, it used to be Baby Danger. Now it's Kid Danger. And that's because his middle name is Danger.
Wow.
And then we have a second one who is Asher. And Ethan likes to call him like Crasher or Basher.
How old is Asher
but
now?
His
like
middle
6
name,
months, 8 months?
He's 8
Cool,
months,
cool.
yeah. And Ethan is just about to turn 5 here in May. And Asher's middle name is Bravery. So it's interesting seeing how those names have played out in their actual characters, because Ethan tends to actually be fairly reserved and cautious, whereas Asher, and granted he's new, but he seems to have... He seems to have a little more aggression and, be a little braver, if you will.
Sure.
So that one seems to play out. My wife always likes to joke that we named Ethan Danger so that he could recognize danger and stay far away from it, because that seems to be the modus operandi. So,
that's funny.
Anyways, but yeah, we've been doing this kids bike thing for a while, and we're pretty stoked on how it's turned out, but there was definitely some hiccups and speed bumps along the way trying to figure this stuff out. I think this is an area both for Jenson, but as the riding public in general, or the riding world, that is improving. I think if you go back a few years, there wasn't as much information out there on the interwebs. And so it was kind of just like fumbling in the dark to try to figure these things out. Nowadays, we have a lot of really good sites, right? There's Two Wheeling Tots is a great one. The Bike Dads is phenomenal. I love those guys on Instagram. I'm always like, oh man, I'm so psyched, like watching what they're doing.
I finally got to meet those guys in Whistler this past summer, and they were super nice. I want to meet up with them. They're right across the border in Vancouver, and I want to say Calgary or Kamloops. So I need to head up there and hang out with them once the border opens back up.
Yeah. And they're just doing a lot of cool things, and everything from testing bikes to writing guides on how to, teach your kid new tricks, or just showing cool videos to inspire you. All kinds of cool stuff going on.
Or to inspire your kid.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
The other day, a friend sent me a video of a little girl on a CRF 70 just roosting around a backyard moto track, just sliding through the turns, flat tracking it. And she must have been 5 or 6. Huge pink helmet. She's wearing just like a dress and then moto boots. And I'm showing my daughter, like, look, this could be you in the backyard. She's like, mouth is wide open, just so psyched.
Nice. Yeah, and there's a couple of like really cool brands that are doing stuff like that. You were actually just talking about you're getting your daughter a cool little setup that's PseudoBike, Pseudomoto.
Yeah. Well, I wish we had more e-bike access, because as we get more into this, kids are pretty small. My daughter's like 28 pounds or so. She's 3.5, so she's on the skinnier, slender side. Doesn't have a ton of muscle. She's easier. She's small and light, so it's not a lot of person to move up a hill, but she doesn't have a ton of muscle. So pedaling, like I've kind of noticed that across the board, pedaling is hard for kids. Not because they don't necessarily want to. It's just way hard. They don't have the muscle mass, and when their bike weighs a huge percentage of their body weight, it's extra hard. And then there aren't really a whole lot of geared options available for the smaller wheel sizes. Derailleurs are like dragging on the ground when the wheels get real small. So I do think electric would really help a lot of kids out with simply being able to access the trails. And the trail network we live on is not e-bike approved or legal or whatnot. So I would love to get her a little Stasek or something, but I know there's going to be drama about it. So I'm like kind of torn, but I did just get her a little... she doesn't know about it yet, so no one spoiled the surprise and tell her. But I did get her a little electric mini moto, a cheapo Razor one, just to see if she likes it and see if Mama will be okay with it. And it'll be here tomorrow. Yeah. I'm stoked.
Man, that's so exciting. Yeah, I've been real tempted by those Stasek Cycles stuff. Cool. I've got a buddy that works over there. He's actually Old Intense family. And man, ever since they've come out, like I'm like, that looks so rad. And I actually live in a good area for it because our trails are e-bike legal. Yeah. And so I am real tempted, but we'll see. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, so we'll see how that goes. And for anyone wondering, these Stasek things are basically, it's like a drill battery that goes onto a little kid's bike. And
it's like a Strider with like a drill battery and a drill motor.
Yeah. And so it's pretty cool because it's more moto style, if you will, but it's like built on
it's got like a pretty good hybrid between a bike and a moto. I mean, it's bicycle parts and it's like not that heavy. And then it's just moto in that there's no pedals or whatever.
There's no pedals.
Yeah, but I mean, it'd be so hard to make you could totally do a pedal assist single speed, and I think that's a big segment. If someone wants to crack that code and make that bike, I would buy one. That would be awesome.
Yeah, right? You hear that, Stasek? Maybe we need that option in your lineup, like a little set of cranks with just a little pedal assist. Anyways, yeah, I think that absolutely. So, well, let's actually dig into this with some form here. So maybe let's start at the beginning, Jeff. How did you introduce your daughter to riding?
Oh man, well, one thing that I've always heard and I kind of believe is that if kid sees mom riding, kid's definitely going to want to ride. And then if kid sees dad riding, kid might want to ride. So my wife's a former national champ cross-country racer, single-speed world champ. Pretty hard. She spends more time on her bike than I do. So, so we're a big bike family. So I kind of assumed kiddo would want to be like mama and ride a bike. And as things have progressed, when the whole family is together doing something, kid's way more into it. So, 8 months or so, we bought just a really cheapo bike that had 2 rear wheels right next to each other. And they kind of had quite a bit of negative camber, so they kind of formed like a wedge in back that would help balance her. And at 8 months, she's way too small to be able to ride it. She couldn't even walk yet. But just got it in the toy room, and I would pop around on it a little bit just to show her how it works. She had no interest or whatever, didn't really know about bikes a whole lot. And then a neighborhood boy was over who was a year older, and he hops on it and zooms around, and then she gets real interested for a few weeks. And she kind of just plays with it, spins the wheels. And then when she's 14, 15 months, then she starts to actually have interest in riding it. And by the time she was 16, 18 months, she was actually riding it around the driveway and stuff and taking it outside. This thing's so small, we could totally ride it inside the house. Just the rule was no helmets inside necessary. You're not going fast. Outside, wear a helmet and be careful. But inside is we try to make it not such a big deal about getting ready and all that, just to have fun and play with it. So that's how we started.
Yeah. And that was similar to us. We went straight to a Strider. Okay. So we bought that before his first Christmas. So we're talking, he was born in May. So, less than 8 months or whatever. And same thing, kind of just put it in his realm, and we'd put him on it and hold the handlebars and, scoot him around and stuff like that. And, totally just let him ride it around the house and stuff. And then as he progressed, started introducing him to the outside. And it's funny because I have videos and pictures and stuff of him on it outside, and he's basically just walking. He's not riding a bike, right? Yeah. He's just walking. But it wasn't long until those strides got just a little bit more. You'd see him glide just a little bit off of each push and stuff like that. And I go back to when I was a kid, and again, I'm terrible with history, even my own.
Yeah, but how old were you when you started riding?
Well, that's what I was going to say is I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't ride a training wheel bike until I was 5 or something like that, 5 or 6. And then I didn't ride a pedal bike until quite a bit after that. And so I was in that 6 to 8 range before I was riding a pedal bike. And I keep telling my wife just how shocking it is to watch, even when my kid was on the Strider, him at, 2.5 years old, ripping down the street on a Strider bike. And I was like, it just wasn't even my reality. Now, my brother did remind me that that may not have been my reality, but I was also a really good swimmer as a kid.
Cool.
So, it's different things. Yeah, this is when we grew up in Hawaii.
Hawaii's a good place to be a good swimmer.
Yes, very much so. And so, it's different things that are coming out as talents or whatever. But it is really exciting as somebody who loves bikes, obviously, to see my kid progressing so quickly. And the Strider bikes, and there's all kinds of brands of balance bikes out there, but for us it was Strider, and we absolutely love them. And I've seen the one that you're talking about, or at least some version of it, where it's got that canted wheel that just helps them balance, and those are super cool.
Yeah.
And is that the kind that you can actually put them back together?
Yep.
And
they can go to super positive camber and allow for a little bit more cornering or whatever. So she couldn't even walk when she started scooting around on it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like she would pop around the house like a lap or two and then move on to something else. Yeah. But like it just kind of opened the door up, like lowered the bar, the gate, the barrier to entry as much as possible.
Yeah. Now, the other piece you mentioned was, seeing your parents ride helps to inspire you, especially mom. For us, my wife doesn't ride as much, but she definitely started to more when Ethan was born. And one of the things that we did was to get, at the time it was, I'm blanking on the name now. It was a Thule. It had a different name to it, but now it's the Yep Mini. It's still owned by Thule, but they changed that up.
That's the seat that goes on the front or the back? It's the front, right?
That's the front one. They do have a Yep that goes on the back as well. But we had tried like a no-name one that somebody had, passed down to us. And what we found was that the interaction of having the kid behind you and whatever just wasn't ideal. The weight was a little bit different. And I wanted to use this for going on actual like trails and stuff. And so having it on the back just didn't feel ideal. So we went with this front carrier, this Yep Mini, that just kind of attaches to the stem, and the kid can hold on to the handlebar, and they've got like a 4 or so point harness that goes all around them, and he had his helmet on, and he has a favorite stuffed animal called Blue. That's a big blue whale.
Nice.
At the time it was like half his body size, and we would take that with us and shove it down between the handlebars and him.
Okay.
And it worked like an airbag. So if you did hit anything with any sort of like bounce to it, it helped steady his head, and like it kept him from contacting like the handlebars or anything like that. So it really helped to do that. But it was rad because, we'd put it on, we had like a beach cruiser thing. And so my wife would ride that, and we'd go on family rides down the bike path. Or if it were me, I was trying, during that period, I was really trying to get mileage because I lived in Springfield, Illinois. Everything's flat. Stuff can be shut down all year. So like mountain biking can be hard during the winter. But I would go out, and he and I would do either bike path rides or gravel rides, or a mix of bike path and gravel, or even if it was dry enough, we'd go on single track trails that were pretty mellow. I mean, we're talking green for sure.
Yeah.
But we'd crank out mileage like dead minimum 12 miles and upwards of like 25, 30 miles on the bike. And he absolutely loved that thing because it just puts them front and center to all the action. They get to, kind of experience the way a bike actually leans and everything. You can talk them through stuff. So if there's like a feature coming up or a bump or something, you can tell them to stiffen up their arms or to, like have some sort of body input to it. So we're a huge fan of that front carrier.
I think the bumps are actually kind of minimized from the kids up front on the bike too.
Yeah. Because there's kind of like a pendulum rocker effect that happens on that rear.
Yeah. And
so,
I think they're safer too, because if you were to like low side and fall over, your handlebar is going to hit the ground rather than the kid smashing right into it. So they're safer in that regards. But if you have like an endo or whatever, that's not going to be good. But from the back of the bike in an endo, they're just going to get catapulted and smash into the ground too. So I kind of do think it's the safest place. Yeah.
And if you think about it too, the weight, while being like near the handlebars, it's still behind the stem. And it actually, what I've found both with this and with like the Mac ride that I know you use, and I've been using that Kids Ride shotgun, is it actually creates kind of a more centered weight in the bike frame.
It's much easier to handle the bike when the weight's that centered.
Yeah, and it puts more weight over the front wheel, so you can see it like grip harder in corners and stuff. So I felt way more confident on that setup than I did on the normal rear setup. And so I was a huge fan. We still have it. We're basically, I think, right at the point where we think we can put Asher in it. This is about when we did it with Ethan. And so I think we'll probably start doing that. And then right now we have a tag along or a trailer bike that goes on the back.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to try to do some family rides here since kind of on lockdown, and might as well go see some stuff, you know?
Yeah, man, I forget when I remember popping around the neighborhood a little bit with Evelina on the kid carrier, the Ergo or whatever.
Yep.
And we just did that real casual on like a very upright, like enduro style bike. I didn't want to be like too leaned over forwards. All my bikes are pretty upright. And we would take that to the park just real casually, but it's nowhere near as comfortable as having the kid off you and on the bike. It's just Evelina wasn't really into the bike thing until she was more like 14-ish months old. And we used that green Ebert safety seat quite a bit at that point. Yeah. It just provided more support for her. And I need to look at this Thule thing, but I think it's kind of similar in that it's a bigger seat and it had a crossbar that goes down over her lap to keep her from getting sent forwards, as well as a harness. So that was a really good kid setup. But, man, she was not into bumps at all until she was like 18 months, 20 months or so. And then we started to do like light fire access roads, gravel roads, that sort of thing. And she could get into it for a while. She could withstand like an hour, hour and a half. And then kind of anything's too long after an hour when your kid's not even 2 years old yet.
Well, that is my, like one of my pro tips is like, both with bikes and with skiing, I always pack some sort of snack.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if you think you're going for 5 minutes or 5 hours, pack snacks.
Yes.
And make them easily accessible, because I used to, like on these long rides with Ethan, I would literally like reach in my pocket while we're riding and like grab a snack out and like feed him around, you know, like, and as long as we had those things, he was good, man. Like we were good times. And I would check in with him all the time. Like, how are you doing? Do you want to go back and whatever? And if he seemed to be indicating at all, like, of course I'm going to turn around, because a kid that's upset on the trail is not, that's not benefiting anybody at that point. So definitely worth coming back.
Any ride on the trail with a kid is more about the kid than about you. So.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So after that, we ended up going more fully to a Strider. At this point, we've now moved out to Hood River. And so we've done that. And then we spent a lot of time that first year, and still up until things closed down, we were spending a lot of time on the pump track with the Strider.
So what ages was Danger... little Ethan, when did he start really riding that Strider and actually gliding enough to use the pump track?
I would say, well, he was ready for the pump track pretty much immediately as far as skill goes.
Yeah.
But we moved out here when he was 3. So, you know, like he had been on that Strider for a while. I would say the glide for the Strider started probably right around that 18-month to 2-year range.
Cool.
Is where he started to like, it looked like he was riding a bike, you know. Prior to that, it was much more of a walk-ish type thing that was going on.
Yeah.
And then I have seen, though, kids like way younger than that who are full into the stride thing. So, you know, I think it depends on the kid for sure. But when we got to the pump track, he was pretty scared. I mean, it's a big pump track. I know adults who are scared to get on it.
Wow.
And we're walking. I was basically just walking him around the pump track to try to teach him the line and, you know, make him understand how it like speeds up every time you go over a bump and everything. And he eventually got to where he could do it all on his own, but he would only start from the flat spots and he wouldn't drop in.
That's tough.
To give scale to the people out there, both on our podcast, and actually, we should probably make mention that we're recording today video, so we'll see how that goes. We might be on YouTube with this one. But you know, like the size of the drop-in on this pump track is probably 4 or 5 feet, somewhere in there. So it's pretty decent.
That's
and
double overhead for a kiddo.
Yeah. And the drop-in's like straight into like a quick bump and then a hard left-hand corner. And so it's a lot to take in. And he was like really scared to do it. I kept trying to convince him and like be like, I'm right here. I can do it, or you can do it. I'll catch you if you need. And he just wasn't trusting me. And up rolls this girl who, I mean, she couldn't have been more than 3.5 herself. And she just straight drops in on a Strider bike. And like my kid literally goes, I can do that, and just chases after her. And from like that time on, it was game on. Like this kid was doing everything he could to be out there. So I think that's a big thing is if you can, obviously times are a little weird right now, but if you can, getting your kid around other kids who ride is super beneficial. It helps to push them in a way that you as a parent will struggle to do, like there's just something about wanting to keep up with your friends.
Yeah. And just seeing that it's plain old possible too. It's just like, oh, that's not a big deal. And then boom.
Yeah, for sure. Now I have a question for you. Helmets.
Yeah.
Half shell, full face, both?
Our little girl's pretty small, so we've never dealt with a full face. My wife's always been of the perspective that the full face is too heavy for how small our little girl is. She doesn't like heavy clothing at all, so we've always gone for half shell mini helmet. And part of that is we know she doesn't like going fast. We trust her to rarely ever go over, 15 miles an hour. And she rarely rides faster than she can run. And from my eyes, like I've noticed that humans get a lot more injured once they're exceeding their natural running speed when they crash, because we've evolved to be able to withstand, a crash from up to 20 miles an hour with minimal broken bones and stuff. Yes, things can happen, but you'll probably be okay if you crash going slower speed. And once you go over that, all of a sudden you're going past what the body's been developed for over the millions of years or whatever. And that's when things really start going sideways. So I'm like, I don't want her to lose her baby teeth and smash her face up. But if it's the difference between having fun riding and not having fun, then whatever. So she was so small. She was like a 42 or 44 centimeter noggin. We got a helmet from the UK. We just got it on the internet, and we couldn't find anything in a 44 centimeter size available in the United States. Nothing. And the only spot we could do it was Europe or Asia, and the European one it made more sense to us. So we went for this British helmet. It's just this tiny little thing. She's still small head, but I think she's like 46. She kind of sort of fits the Cali helmet now, with a beanie on under it. Yeah.
That was our trick is when we first put Ethan, this is back in like early Strider and the mini seat things, we would put a beanie on him and put the helmet on because we couldn't find one small enough for his head. Luckily, that didn't last too terribly long, and so he fit into that helmet fairly quick, but yeah, definitely challenging. We're now at the stage, and this pretty much came at pump track time, that we ended up going with a full face helmet. And there's a growing amount of those, which is awesome. But the one we ended up on is from 7IDP. It's actually a kid's version of their M1 helmet. And he loves that. He calls it his dyno helmet, and like it's taken some abuse for sure. And I'm so thankful for it, because you can see all the times he's like skidded out and bonked his head and whatever, and it's like still holding up. And like none of these crashes have been hard enough that I'm worried about the helmet's integrity. But it's definitely saved him a few times. But like you said, these are at places where it's beyond what, the normal run pace or whatever is. He's definitely going faster. He's pushing it, like we have, a little set of dirt trails below our pump track that actually get pretty steep and quite loose. And he's taken it down that and, like wiped out a few times. And to get away from something like that with just a couple of scrapes on your knee or whatever is way better than like smashing your head into something.
Yeah. So, oh man, my daughter actually broke her helmet with riding with her mama, not with me, thank goodness. Whoa. But not badly, just the front part, because she face planted, and the front, like kids' helmets often have like a visor built out of styrofoam.
Oh, yeah.
which I think is a good idea because if they're not wearing a full face, that extra bit of thing off the forehead can keep their eyes and their nose from hitting the ground. And so she lost a big chunk out of that. So yeah, time for a fresh helmet. But man, she had a big OTB with me on Friday or something. We were coming down a local blue level trail that it's like a big Strava race going on. Folks love racing down it. So it's like a pretty legit trail. Not crazy. We pedal up it pretty often. And there's a slippery rock, and she just is hard on the brakes. Front tire comes down it, twists 90 degrees, and jackknifes full OTB right under her face. I'm so glad she didn't actually have anything bad happen, but she got a mouthful of dirt. And I'll be in the market for a full face here soon as she starts riding more proper trails.
Well, yeah, luckily there's a growing amount of those that are good and light and or lightish.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm curious about the, I want to say it was 100% was selling a kid-sized helmet, a youth helmet that went down to like 47 or 48 centimeters. It looked like one of the smallest options, but it was spendy. I want to say it was $200 or something like that, or maybe even $280. It was a lot of money for a kid's helmet, and you never know when your kid's going to hit a growth spurt and go up 4 helmet sizes.
Yeah, and that's the challenge with kids stuff, right? Yeah. Like it's just there is a time limit on all of this.
But at the same time, like you're only a kid once and life's short, and with this COVID, you know, life could be over any day now. Like I kind of got to live a little bit too. So it's like,
well, and honestly, right now, this is my kid's main outlet. Like we usually would go, you know, periodically into Portland and go to the like science museum, and we'd go. He loves Indian food, so we'd go to this restaurant and like.
Your kid's way braver than ours.
Yeah, in that situation, I guess, but he's pretty picky about some other stuff. But anyways, you know, like we used to have all these things. We'd go do play dates, the playground, and now. The bike is like the one thing that we can get out and do and maintain our social distance and all that stuff. And so he's on that every day now. And it's like one of the few like blessings I can take out of this COVID thing is that I have watched my kid progress immensely on his bike because he's now on a 16-inch pedal bike.
Nice.
And his skills just every day improve so much because he's just on it. Yeah. And, you know, there's other kids in the neighborhood and they're all doing their thing. And so there's this kid, Cole, who he's almost the same age as Ethan. I think he's like 4 months older or 6 months older. But like he will be barefoot, shirtless, full face helmet on and riding a 20-inch bike, just mobbing. And then him and his brother built like a little just wooden ramp thing. And he's like sending it. And you know the way sidewalks are built, they have like the little expansion marks on them, right? Where they cut into it.
Little cracks every 3.5 feet.
Yeah. He's clearing like 1.5, 2 of those. Oof. And you're just like, holy cow. And so my kid's not nearly as good at riding as he is, but watching him do stuff is pushing Ethan to push harder and everything. So huge fan of that. So now let's talk about, we've talked about kind of early bike stuff. And you've been a big fan of Woom. I've been on Strider bikes, that kind of stuff. But as you're moving towards pedal bikes, do you have any thoughts as to, or like challenges that you've seen and had to overcome in that area?
One big thing that you got to look at are brakes, because once the kid's confident with using the brake, then you can get them riding all kinds of cool spots. And our little girl started using the brake like pretty reliably, consistently at right around 2 years old. And I could actually trust her to use her brake on the steeper stuff by 2.5, even earlier than that, too. I remember getting videos and photos before we went to Arkansas, I want to say, to shoot that video way back. And she was riding a local trail with the brake, totally in control, gliding. And we had the Woom 1. And I know you guys just got Norco. Norco has some pretty cool kids' bikes. They're not nearly as expensive as the Wooms. And I believe they have a Strider-style run bike with the handbrake. And that's pretty cool. Once you get that, it really opens up the spots you can go. So, we got that Woom when she was 18 months old or so. And I did a little like video about it for Woom in exchange for receiving a bike. And she wasn't quite using the brake, like to the point that I'd trust her at that age. But by the time her second birthday rolled around, she was. And we also swapped on some more mountain bikey tires since we primarily ride off-road here in Bellingham.
Yeah. And our first pedal bike for Ethan was a little 12-inch Cleary
Oh,
Gecko.
Those are great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, Cleary bikes, those are from San Rafael, California. I wish I got to know those guys before I moved out of town, but those bikes look really cool.
Yeah, they're really cool. And the Gecko is awesome. I mean, it's tiny, and we're excited to use it for Asher when he's ready. We kind of put Ethan on it a little bit too late. And so geometry was like way off for his body size. And I think it actually did a little bit of a detriment to his learning curve because like he just was not able to pedal with any efficiency. And it just wasn't the right setup. But that wasn't the fault of the bike. I think that really was on us for doing it a little too late and a little too long.
His fault for growing too fast.
Yeah, that's it. Jeez, Ethan. But, you know, like part of that is not knowing where to go next. We were like really struggling on like what to do for a bike and trying to figure it out. And we ended up going, having a buddy who was getting rid of a early rider in a 16-inch. And when we made that transition this year, you could see that the geometry just fit him better. And it just opened up the world for him. And actually, we've been having to raise the seat as he progresses because he's getting better and it allows him to go faster.
Yeah,
and,
he can pedal more efficiently with a straighter knee. Yeah.
So, and I actually would not be surprised if he's pretty short-lived on this 16-inch early rider and might go to a 20 fairly quickly because of how fast he's progressed. And that's a hard thing as a parent to stomach because even getting this bike used from a buddy and who he gave me a great price, it still was kind of painful, like knowing that this was a short-lived thing, right? Like when I buy a bike for me, I can be like, yeah, I can have this for years. I generally don't, but I could. It's hard to make those statements with kids' bikes, right? Like we tend to see that.
Dude, I'm right there too. I'm like debating if I want to get a Prevello with disc brakes for the mountain bike trails that she's riding all the time. And it's like, oh, that's a chunk of change. And like with this whole like electric mini moto thing, I'm like, a Stasek would be better, but I don't know if she'll even like the motor. I'll try the cheap. So I don't know if there's any definitive things out. I don't know. Like, I think it's pretty cool that Norco has those lower price bikes because then you can see if your kid's into it. And if they're into it, then it's so hard to convince your significant other that it's important to buy the same thing again because it's better, lighter, faster, whatever. So it's a tough one either way. I say just go for the nicer stuff now because you know what? The amount of satisfaction and memories and good times you get out of a bike, that's pretty hard to beat with anything else. And honestly, a good kid's bike, you know, $300-$400, that's not nearly as bad as a good adult bike. So I need to just harden up and buy that.
If you do have 2 kids or more, it's real easy to pass on. So that's been our justification is we just know that we're going to hang on to these. So I've just been, you know, like the Strider went up into storage and it'll be there for a little bit longer until Asher's ready to roll on that. And then once he's ready for that, we'll bring it down, and then the Gecko will come back down, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I really wanted one of those Geckos. I had this relationship with Woom, so I went for the Woom. The only thing about the Woom pedal bike is that it's 14-inch wheels instead of 12, which is tough because it's bigger, and you know a lot of the times that standover clearance is key. But then the bigger wheels are so much more stable at speed.
Yep.
However, it's tough to find knobby tires in a 14-inch diameter. A lot of the times there's so many good brands that make kids bikes. Like I talk about Woom all the time. Cleary is another one. Early Rider, Prevello. There's Spawn bikes. There's little shredder bikes. There's Kakua Jumper is a really cool full suspension Strider style bike. There's just like the tip of the iceberg. There's all these cool brands doing this, and I think Woom is one of the fastest growing companies in the cycling industry right now. So folks are hearing about them more, but there's a ton of these smaller brands that make really high quality products, and a lot of them have these relationships with the Asian suppliers where they can get OE quantities of like 14-inch knobby tires, but then aftermarket they're really hard to find. So, man, it's almost like I'd almost consider getting a whole bike if it comes with that tire, because a 25, 35-pound kid isn't going to be destroying a tire nearly as fast as a grown-up's going to be. So
yeah, absolutely.
Weird little thing we've saw. There's some pretty cheap Kevlar bead tires available on the internet, though, that don't weigh a whole lot, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and like luckily on our new bike for Ethan, the 16-inch, tires are a lot easier to come by. And actually the guy I bought it from had both. So it had the knobbies on there originally, and we've just left those on because he likes dirt. Mm-hmm. His favorite thing is to get on the dirt, and he rides it on the street all the time, but I'd rather sacrifice a little bit of efficiency there for him to be able to still go on the dirt.
Yeah. So how old was Ethan when he really started pedaling?
He started pedaling at 2.5.
Yeah, Evelina was same age. Yep.
Yeah, I think it was like right before we moved out here. And so he was about 2.5, and he still preferred the Strider when we went to the pump track because of just the challenge of the trail itself. But for like street stuff, he was pretty good on the pedal bike there.
Yeah.
And now he's absolutely killing it on his pedal bike, like just flying down the street. He's starting up. He's actually practicing pedaling standing up.
Cool. Yeah,
and learning how to apply that power down, he's like getting that a little better. And so it's pretty rad to watch, and I'm pretty excited about it. One of the things that we found really challenging, and we actually there's some guides out there. The Two-Wheeling Tots Guide to Bikes is, I think, just one of the best ones that people should read. But a big push is for sizing bikes according to inseam and your minimum seat height, right? Cool. Mm-hmm. And that was something that for a while I struggled to really figure this out because, I knew adult bikes really well. I could size people up, halfway good by just looking at them, and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure this, and this. But with kids' bikes, it's a little challenging because if you just look at wheel size, that's only a portion of the story, right? Like it's real tempting to be like, oh, 12-inch, that's for like, 2 to 3 year olds or whatever. But if you actually look at some of the geometries and stuff, while wheel size matters, the seat height is way more crucial because it's going to be the thing that either allows them to touch the ground, not allow them to touch the ground, or maybe have some room to grow in it, all of that kind of stuff. And so what we found is, especially on Ethan's latest bike, is that matching that minimum seat height to his inseam was really crucial. And in this case, because this is his second pedal bike, I wanted that minimum seat height to be a little bit on the higher side so that his toes, like he kind of has to tippy toe just a little bit at the minimum height. And that gives us some room to grow in there. Whereas with his first bike, the Gecko, that one, you want to be able to flat foot it because you're basically moving from a Strider where you are flat footing things to a pedal bike. And so, they're not going to be able to mash up hills super fast or anything, but they're going to make that transition really well. So that was definitely something that was a learning point for me. And then the other thing that took a while for me to like realize what I was looking at was body position. That when you look at kids' bikes, just without a kid on them, they kind of look weird when they have good geometry because you've got to have a really kind of low slung or sloping top tube so that you have good standover so that if they need to dismount quickly, they're not fighting that with their, the confluence of their legs, we'll say, the crotch, right? They're not having to battle that as a thing. But you also want a fairly long top tube on there. So you kind of want a long cockpit. And so these bikes that I think look funny tend to actually be the ones that fit better. They have kind of longer reach on them, but really low slung top tubes. The wheels tend to look a little bit off, but if you have too short of a wheelbase, too short of a top tube, it puts the kid a little bit too much upright and kind of minimizes their ability to efficiently pedal and put down power.
Well, keep in mind these little wheels are very, very twitchy because they make for that really small trail measurement.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
The Woom bikes are cool because the forks are 0 offset, which really slows down the steering quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think Strider might actually do the same thing too with 0 offset forks and even a super slack head angle. But then when the top tubes start getting longer, that also helps add some more stability and control. So that whole long front center thing, I think, is a really good thing for the kids' bikes.
Yeah. And it's funny because if you look at them on pictures, I think they look kind of weird because they don't have that typical geometry that you'd think of for an adult bike. But you have to remember that kids have kind of weird body geometry, right?
Yeah,
like they've got these big old heads and like tiny short legs and all that kind of stuff. So, it's no wonder that if you look at the cheap department store bikes that we've all historically known and like what I grew up with, they didn't fit great. And it's because they're just compacting down, substandard bikes that they took from adults and just made them small. But there really needed to be some rethinking of how geometry was being implemented for kids' bikes. And so definitely like inseam and minimum seat height, it should be kind of your first place. And then, if you can get kind of a longer cockpit for that, and like Jeff said, a 0 offset, that improves the trail of that front wheel. So just stability is everything. Because, a 12 and 14 and 16-inch wheel is so twitchy.
Yeah.
So.
And if there's any other bike part that I could upgrade, like I mentioned, that Prevello, the disc brakes seem like such a cool way to go. Yeah. I don't think, Woom is offering some mountain bikes now. I haven't checked them out that closely to see what the smallest wheel size is. Prevello is based, I think, in Riverside. They're Southern California, and they actually sponsor a jump trail here in Bellingham on Galbraith.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I really want to support those dudes. And there's a neighborhood kid that has 2, one at his mom's house, one at his dad's house. And
Lucky.
They've I know, he has loved those and has been shredding on them. I might actually buy one of those for Evelina. But the biggest holdup now, she's been mountain biking for a few months, riding like some not gnarly stuff, but riding real trails. And her hands will get tired and she'll have a hard time with the brakes. She has not had a tough time with grabbing the front brake too hard and flipping over the handlebars. I see some parents telling their kids, don't touch the front brake. I don't think I really agree with that. I think the kids' hands they need all the braking power they can get, and the front brake's going to give them enough so they don't run into something and crash. So, I wished more disc brake options were available. And if I could go back and have the choice between the Woom and something with a disc, I would probably go for the disc. But the Wooms are so lightweight, and that's been really helpful.
Yeah, so that's been the other thing going to the early rider really did shave weight, and I think that opened up things for Ethan. And again, it's not that the Clary's even all that heavy. It's just the transition to the early rider was geometry and weight and all that. And so,
which early rider are you talking about? Because they have quite a few.
I'm on the Belter 16, I think it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I think he's going to jump out of that pretty quickly. So we might be in the market for a bike come Christmas again. But I would say, if you're looking for a good bike for your kid to really progress on, those key things are going to be handbrakes for sure. The coaster brake. There are some kids in the neighborhood who are doing that, and they're having fun, no question. But I really do think the handbrake is a skill that.
Oh my gosh, it's huge, and they can get it early in life,
three years old,
or even 2. When Evelina was 2.5, or one of her first rides on her pedal bike, I already knew she could use her brakes. I let her ride down the boardwalk in Fairhaven, Washington, which probably descends, 60 feet of elevation down to the ocean. Yeah. And it's fairly steep, 5% gradient. And she's just cruising down it, fully in control, using both brakes, not scared, not nervous, just dialed. And I'm like, all right, cool. I feel like I've done something as a dad. I've taught her how to use her brakes safely. And here she is going down this, people are looking isn't this kid going to die? And but she was never twitchy, never getting speed wobbles, just totally in control, stops at the bottom, puts a foot down, smiles back. It was
We
cool.
have a dirt like walking trail thing that bikes are allowed on near the house here. And one of the trail parts has like I don't know, it's 25 feet or something of elevation gain or loss. But in the middle of it has two sharp switchbacks, like 180-degree switchbacks. And I've been working with Ethan on perfecting his like amount of front brake going into it versus the amount of rear brake through corners and all that kind of stuff. And it's been awesome watching him progress in that. You know, like the first time he went down, it was kind of a mess. But as we've gone through this a few times now, he like learns that he can modulate the different brakes differently. And, you know, Ethan's almost 5, but even at 2.5, he was learning how to handle those two brakes. And so, yeah, I'm all for hand brakes. Like I've skipped the coaster brake altogether with Ethan. I actually don't know if he'd even know how to use a coaster brake. So
they're sketchy, man. I've done quite a bit of coaster brake riding myself in adulthood, and you think you got it, and then you go to bunny hop up to that curb, and all of a sudden, as you pull up, your feet rotate back just enough, and you grab that brake, and your front wheels into the curb, you're over the handlebars, and you're on the ground, and you're just bummed.
Yeah. So. So I think those are kind of my takeaways. Light bike, measure the inseam, and generally like you want to be close to your inseam, and it all kind of depends on age and skill level and everything, but close to the actual inseam of your kid, and a few inches above. Good brakes, whether disc or at least a V brake. Which, you know, the maintenance on a V brake is real easy and everything. And then I'm a big fan of the belt drive on the Cleary, mainly because it's clean and everything. Or sorry, not on the Cleary, on the
early rider.
Early rider. The one thing I don't love about the early rider, and it has only happened once, is we did get Ethan's pants caught in it one time. And that's because it doesn't have any sort of chain guard. And I actually, as much as when I was a kid, I hated the chain guard because it didn't look cool. As an adult, you're like, oh man, that could make sense, you know? So that was like the one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of with that bike, is that it doesn't have a chain guard. But I just rolled up his jeans properly and he's been fine. So
yeah, man, the Wooms have a pretty cool system. Have you seen it over their chain?
I don't know if I have. I've got them up here. Let's take a look.
Oh man, so it's pretty wild. It's this plastic thing that like snaps into each link, and then it's got a guard that goes inside the chain. And literally I've never seen the chain on Evelina's bike. It's fully sealed with this plastic cover thing, and it makes it look like a belt, but it's really a chain in there. It's pretty crazy, but it's worked well for us. So
that is cool.
I've wanted to swap the gear ratio on her Womb 2 to a lower so she can pedal uphill a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I still see her spun out on the flats wanting to go a little bit faster. So,
yeah. And if she's learning the stand-up technique, she's probably going to start being able to push that heavier gain ratio, you know, and get up the hills soonish.
I kind of think it could be even a little bit lower, but it's a lot of work. I don't know if I can mess with that plastic chain guide and still retain it. So
fair enough.
Man.
And that does make a case for like a geared bike, but I'm not a huge fan of external geared bikes for young kids, mainly because kids are tough on bikes, right?
Yeah.
Like they drop them in the street, they knock a derailleur out. Like it's. You really have to teach them to lay it down on the other side. So that is one thing that's kind of cool about like Cleary and a few others where they actually have flip-flop wheels. So if you're dealing with a lot of hills and stuff, you can flip it. But there's also some options out there that are doing like 3 and plus internal geared hubs. And I think that makes a lot of sense in a kid's bike, you know, like easy maintenance and everything. It does add a little bit of heft, though, for sure. But something to consider as you're shopping for bikes. But yeah, I'm looking at this Womb, the off-air with the suspension fork.
I haven't even checked those out in a long time. I've seen a few around town, and folks love them. But
yeah, they look pretty cool. I keep looking at, like you mentioned, we have Norco now, and I've been looking at their like full suspension 20-inch bikes, and they're not cheap. Like, ugh. But I'm like, Christy, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to buy that for Eden. So luckily, my wife is full on board with us buying bikes for the kids. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. My favorite thing about this whole quarantine is we're building out the backyard to have a bike track for Evelina to ride on.
Nice.
It's also a mini moto track because the elevation change. It's too much. She's ridden her pedal bike back there once, and it's just like 10 seconds of fun and then 3 minutes of hiking, and the ratio is off. So I think it's going to be good for the moto. But, man, that's just if you can do any of this stuff at home in your yard, in front of your house, like it's a good time. You'll never forget it.
So we have a slight grade to the part of the street we live on. There's actually a decently sized hill right before our house. But then on the other side of the street is a sidewalk that goes kind of the majority of the length of our street. And it's just straight and just goes on. And I've been priming all the neighbors as we go on our walks and stuff that we're going to get all the parents together of kids to like fund a mini skills course that just runs the length of the sidewalk. So it's going to start at my neighbor's like directly across the street because he has a couple of kids. And we're going to start there and just have like little ramps, little, skinnies, little teeter-totters, things like that. And they'll just be along the street. And that side of the road is kind of the uphill side, so most people have retaining walls and stuff there. So what we're planning to do is basically just at the end of the night, because it'll go in front of a bunch of neighbors' house, the kids or the adults have to push all the skills features up against the walls so that, if people are walking, they're not in the way or whatever. So we're excited to get started on that, and we're going to put, each parent group in charge of building some feature, and they put it out. So
nice.
It should be pretty cool. Did you see, was it the Lone Wolf, or he just did like a kind of entry ramp thing on his YouTube video off his deck, and then he's building like some sort of little pump track or jump thing or whatever?
No, but that's awesome. I haven't seen that yet.
I think it was on the Lone Wolf. It might have been, I think it was Lone Wolf that was doing it. Anyways, but one of the things that was super cool, one of the features we want to do, is his dad, who apparently does a bunch of woodwork stuff, came up with a ramp that is basically 2x4s or 2x6s, something like that, on just a standard, angled platform, right? So super basic, like you built when you were a kid. But he got tricky, and what he did is he put semicircle ends that were connected together and pivoted with pins on them. And what it did is it made pivot points for the last two boards. So as you pulled these pins and rotated things, you could either increase the transition at the end of the last two boards, and they were connected together. So if you did the first one, it would raise the second one. And then if you did the second one, it kicked even harder. So like you could kick this one and it would move that, and then you could kick this one. And anyways, and then you'd put the pins back in. But the other cool part is you could transition it the other way, so it could make a rolled landing as well. And I am absolutely planning to build those. So you guys should check this out. I'm pretty sure it's the Lone Wolf. Maybe there's a Lone Ranger and a Lone Wolf. I never remember which one's which. But you should check it out. It's a recent video on his YouTube. It
might be Lone Ranger because he's got kids, and I don't think Drew at Lone Wolf has any kids.
Fair enough. Yeah, he's definitely got kids, and he's riding the Ritmo V2, I think.
Yeah, so. That's Lone Ranger. Yep.
Okay, Lone Ranger. Sorry.
Yep.
Lone Wolf, you're still cool. I like you too. But that's not who we're looking for. So anyways, you should check it out. It's a great video. But yeah, so I'm going to try to steal these ideas. He said that his dad might actually make plans that you can purchase for it. So I'm hoping, because I'd love to support him in this just for coming up with a cool idea. But yeah, super rad. So Jeff, you were asking like is 26 the new kids wheel? And my response is yes, absolutely. Like, I think it is. And I think we probably should talk a little bit about the common wheel sizes. So we generally start at 12 as usually the small one, although there is stuff as small as 9, right?
Yeah, our little, like the first bike she had was 9-inch wheel for around the house or whatever, and off-road it was super sketchy. And then 12 is, the Cleary Gecko is a pedal bike, 12-inch wheel, and it's like one of the only 12-inch wheel pedal bikes.
Yeah.
I think Norco makes a 14-inch wheel pedal bike. Our WOM 2 is a 14-inch wheel pedal. That's what the Zulu from Provello and Early Rider also offers, a 14-inch wheel pedal option.
Yeah, and then we go into 16. Are we seeing anything in the 18 realm, or do we jump from 16 to 20?
I
feel like it
haven't seen much in 18. I think BMX might have some 18-inch wheel options.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They're harder to find. It's surprisingly hard to find good quality BMX bikes for kids, and I remember seeing like the micro-sized BMX race bikes all over when I was a kid, and now I haven't. Maybe I got to check out like Redline or something.
I think Fly and Stolen both have stuff. I think
because they gotta be more freestyle related though, because like you could usually get into BMX racing by like 4 or 5. Right. That's a great skill builder, but I don't even remember where to find those bikes. And like none of us mountain bike nerds ever take the BMX stuff serious, unfortunately.
I take it serious that I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up racing when I was like, starting out at 10 or 11 or whatever, but. Yeah. Man, like there's all these little kids, like 4 and 5, racing, and they'd use like sew-up tires, really small, like 7/8-inch tires on 20-inch wheels, and they would make it around the track. Not super fast, but they were shredding. And there they are, the minis and the juniors. Yeah.
Quick Google search comes up with actually quite a few. Kink, DK, Chase, Haro, all seem to have stuff that some in the race category, some in the kind of freestyle category.
Yeah, we have a
Fit. Misfit is so rad.
That's what I have in Sedona for Evelina. It's got 3-piece cranks on it, and it's way too much bike for her. But last time we were there was in the fall. She was freshly 3, and she could not stand up and pedal on it. And it was like it's too heavy for like she'll be able to ride it as she gets older, but. It's like even though the wheel size is small on the Misfit, it's still like I can ride that bike fairly comfortably. It's kind of like, it's a tough one.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's some cool stuff there. I've actually been hanging on to my 20-inch BMX that's mine for my kid because it's close enough to what I remember riding as a BMX kid when I was young, like in this 8 to 10 range and whatever. And so I've just been hanging on to that for him. And it'll be old, but man, it'll still work. And
hey, BMX bikes haven't changed that much.
Not that much, yeah. And it's nice to have for me because I occasionally pull it out and try to prove that I'm not old yet, which it usually does the opposite because I'll get hurt and be like, but I think, but as we go through them, we go 16 and then 20, which is a bigger jump, 20 to 24. And I do think that 26 is kind of the, new thing. And that's going to obviously be for older kids, right? We're going to probably be looking at 8+ years old there. Yeah. But around here, like we have a group that I'm bummed because COVID's throwing a loop in my plans here, but it's gonna have a brain fart and forget the name of it. I'm thinking Little Shredders, but that's not it. But School of Send. There's a guy here, Gary Posh, who is an absolute shredder, and he runs this School of Send. And basically they teach kids, I think, starting at age 5 and going all the way up into early teens. And they just take them up to the trails, to the pump track, to various places. They'll pick them up after school in this little minibus that he's got all murdered out with like a big rack for the bikes, and take them out and teach them how to shred. Like it's amazing. I literally have seen like 7 to 9-year-olds hitting jumps that I'm like, I don't know if I'll hit that. Like they're sending it. And it's rad because there are definitely kids who are overbiked in that situation, but because he's teaching them such good skills and stuff, they're able to be overbiked and still have a bike they can grow into. Because I think it is a bit tempting as a parent to always oversize so that they can grow into a bike, but that can actually be a detriment to them progressing. But you want to be able to do that a little, right? It'd be great if you could get 3 years out of a bike instead of 1.5, right? Especially when they're 3 to 600 or sometimes even more. Like looking at these full suspension bikes that are coming in at $1,500 to $2,500, it's like, I'd like to get a few years out of that, right?
Ideally.
So I think there is something to being able to like push the wheel size just a little bit, but as long as you're kind of watching top tube lengths and inseam heights and all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. But yeah. Now, do you think Evelina, right?
Yep, Evelina.
Do you think she's going to lean towards the dirt side of things or towards the road side of things?
Oh, I think towards the dirt. We live directly on a huge 50-plus mile mountain bike trail network. All the local kids in town, all of her future friends or whatever, riding buddies, they're all big mountain bikers. And the road scene here is not very big, nor very safe.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that seems to be the leaning of Ethan here. Every time we go up to Family Man, which is kind of a middle ground at Post Canyon here, where there's like all these progression, like kid jumps and stuff like that. And he just loves it. Like, absolutely. Right now we've been doing that together on that kids ride shotgun seat, which is cool. Fantastic. I've loved that thing. And the Mac ride, you were saying you were using that on the e-bike with Evelina, and I think that makes so much sense to put those two things together, because between the seat, the kid, all that other stuff, you're packing some extra weight for sure.
Honestly, the extra weight of the e-bike helps neutralize the kid's weight up top, and it just makes it it's less noticeable when she's on that versus a regular bike.
Yeah.
And then it's just chilling. Like, it's a different way of doing it. It's fun either way. She's only 30 pounds, but a lot of kids, her same age are 10, 15 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
And that adds up pretty quick. I wish e-bikes were legal on our local trails.
Yeah.
That would be I could more easily take her pedal bike up to the jump trails with me or wherever else and let her get a ride in on some different terrain and then shuttle her back.
Yep.
We have been using the towie strap a little bit.
I was just going to say, have you tried that thing?
Yeah, it's pretty decent. Unfortunately, our little gal is not into it anymore. She was like, one time she got kind of nervous or whatever, and then she put her feet down and grabbed the brakes. Then the strap got really long. And she didn't say anything, and then it kind of sprang and pulled her back. It wasn't like, it's way better than like an inner tube or like a homemade type leash or whatever. But still, it kind of scared her a little bit, so now she's not into it at all.
I was actually telling my wife that we were on a run the other day. That's been, since our trails are closed, my wife and I have been running a fair bit. Actually, we started long before COVID, but we were on a run, and we saw a family with one of those, and I was like, Christy, I think I need to get one of those. So I need to try that out. And
the way they slip onto the saddle, it's just like a closed loop that slides over the nose of your saddle.
Okay.
And like 2/3 of the time, if the kid blows past you, it'll just pull the strap right off the saddle, and it won't keep them going. It'll keep them from having the strap, stop them in place, flipping them over the handlebars. So that's a really cool safety feature that's built into it. And then the amount of elasticity is pretty good for a kid. Yeah. And the quick little carabiner, it's pretty easy. I wish it was just a little bit longer so it was more comfortable to like wrap around your waist or whatever.
Yeah.
But generally, it's a pretty decent little thing. You can make your own, but it's turnkey. It's like, I think it's like $50 with shipping and tax and everything.
Yeah,
all said and done.
That's not too bad. Well, I'll have to check that out. And that's TOWHEE, is that right? Towie?
Something like that. Yeah, it's hard to Google for, but you can find it.
Yeah. So pretty cool little option. I've been planning to throw Ethan on the trail bike to try that behind us, but I think that's probably more suited for our commuter setup than a mountain biking setup. It kind of like we were talking about with the kid on the rear seat. I feel like there's a little bit more of a pendulum swing that happens with those if you do go over some stuff. And right now, my kid loves hitting jumps. Like, he's not jumping, but he loves like rolling into stuff and going up and down. And so we've been doing like there's this run called Middle School that is off of Family Man there, and it's just a bunch of switchback berms with jumps in the middle, and they're all either rolled doubles or tabletops, so you don't have to gap things and like, I'll suck up the jump so we're only going a couple inches off the ground, but he just absolutely loves that, and it's been great doing that with that Kids Ride shotgun, because again, he can just like be right in the action and learn kind of how to handle that. And I've actually been teaching him how to like stand up when things look chunky so that he can suck up some of the impact and not deal with the seat. So
Evelina stands up too, but I do get, like, I'm neither the shotgun or the Mac ride, but I do get nervous that she's not going to have the strength if I need to slow down quickly to keep herself from getting hucked over the handlebars.
Yeah. And I think that's, like we started with the shotgun when Ethan was just a little over 4. Okay. And so, he's got a little bit of time and strength on your kid for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
So, it's all about balancing those things. And some kids just progress. That kid, Cole, that I was talking about on the street, he's, 5, and his brother, I think, is 8 or 9. And he's more aggro than his 8 or 9-year-old brother. And, he just has that drive and that push. And his brother's a good rider and, strong and all that. But like, just at 5, like, you can see this kid's going to do a backflip before he's 12, like, it's happening.
Oh man.
he's just that kid, and awesome, but, you definitely have to kind of gauge what you're going to do, the tools you're going to use, the bikes you're going to put your kid on based on how they're progressing and everything. So yeah, cool. Other than that, like, has there been anything that has like been a major setback for you with riding with Evelina, or any challenges you've experienced that you've had to overcome?
I think the hardest thing is just sometimes your kid doesn't want to ride a bike. Sometimes they do. Yeah. You have to be ready when like the kid wants to go ride to just, okay, this is a golden opportunity. Drop what you're doing. End up maybe you're riding in your flip-flops and you're just, making do and just kind of letting your kid have that chance to get out there. That's one thing. And then the opposite happens too when like she just does not want to go for a ride, and it's so hard to pry her outside. So that's the hardest for us, is when she doesn't want to ride and we do want to ride, then that gets to be a pretty natural conflict. But if my wife's coming out and riding, that usually means she wants to come ride. Yeah. So that's been our trick.
Yeah, same here. Trying to make sure you balance the amount of pressure you put on them. Yeah. I don't mean that as a bad thing, but like, my kid likes a lot of other activities, coloring. He has a couple of shows he likes, things like that. And sometimes I'll get off work and I'll be like, hey, Ethan, you want to go for a ride? And he'll be like, no, I want to color. And I'm like, you can color anytime. Like, it's sunny and beautiful. And you do have to kind of just remember that, like, if they're not into it, pushing them isn't going to make them more into it. Now, I do usually follow up with like, Ethan, if we don't do it now, and you want to do it later, we'll run out of sunlight, or, things like that, to just really make him aware of it. And often he has chosen to end up riding instead of doing whatever activity. But I try to do that pressuring just light enough, to like make him understand. But, I will say he is definitely finding the love for riding now. Cool. To where I almost don't have to convince him anymore. And that's new. That's like in the last year or less. Whereas before, one
of the moto podcasts I've been listening to, the guy had a really, really cool bit of advice that I think applies to us mountain bikers. And that was that it's not important to tell your kid to go fast. Like, don't worry about encouraging your kid to go fast. just do your best to try to get them to learn proper techniques. And if they're asking for help, like, don't encourage them to just blast it. Like, try to help them out with being more in control, because the need for speed is gonna be there as they get better.
Yeah.
So if we can do all we can to keep them safe and get them the proper techniques to do it safely, they'll take care of going fast when they're ready for it. I mean, on their side of things, they're big into racing, and so he's seeing lots of the other parents pushing their kids to just send it fast, fast, fast. And he's like, no, we've just been kind of learning the right techniques first, and I know one day when he's ready, he'll want to go fast.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to follow that as best I can, but, you know, like, you try and then you do, and it's
no,
it's hard when your kid's only 3.5 too.
Come on. Yeah, I actually kind of had a recent example of this. I was watching my kid on his pedal bike, and he's getting faster and stuff, but he was cornering and dropping his inside pedal or pedaling while cornering. And most of the time that's not an issue when you're just doing light corners, but he was starting to corner harder. And there was a few times that it got pretty close to sketchy where he'd catch that pedal, not quite bucket toss him, but it could. And so I just kind of made a game with some cones and stuff like that. I think I used some of his plastic cones, and I had some of my water bottles and stuff. And we just went out and practiced cornering drills. And, like I kind of sold it to him as he was learning a trick, right? And he got to show his mom the trick that he had learned and everything. And so I really kind of just spent probably the better part of 30 minutes plus working with him on different corner things. And it's interesting because I now see him cornering harder and faster without me having to tell him to corner harder and faster. He's just learning that because he knows this skill, he can go faster into things. So, I think skill before speed is absolutely key. But you do have to make it something that's fun. Like, it can't just be like running drills and be like, why aren't you getting this?
Man, I think she's not really ready to do like drills or whatnot yet. But as we get, in 6 months, that'll probably change. But I can't wait to do them with her. We do a lot of family follow the leader drills. Yeah. And then there's we ride in some basketball courts with some circles on them. And it's like, all right, everybody stay inside the circle. Everybody stay outside the circle. That's been fun. And we do like little circuits that are we've set up little tiny little tracks. Like, let's ride some laps. Yeah. And then who's going to go first? That we have a lot of fun with that.
Nice. Yeah. And we've loved like the basketball and tennis courts that are near our house, because with them being flat, but having stuff for them to go around, like there's benches, there's lines. Like I'll have Ethan try to ride on a line and just stay on the line. And that's really hard when you're on a 12 to 16 inch bike that has a lot of wobble to it. They're not super stable. And so it's, if you can come up with fun things for them to do that they don't see as drills, they see as, like activities or whatever.
Well, they don't know like a drill is necessarily not fun also. So as long as you make it fun, the word drill won't be a loaded term with like, oh, I don't want to do a drill. That sounds lame. So they don't know the difference. Yeah.
So just, remember to make it like a fun little challenge and stuff. And they tend to respond. And again, the response, I'm a year and a half ahead on all of these things versus Evelina, where this is newer for my kid. And there's still time. Like if I went back to 3.5, I'm like, did Ethan do any sort of drill? I don't think so. Like we were working on brakes. I guess that was kind of a drills thing, but it's definitely about making it fun and just getting them out there and be prepared to carry their bikes back if you go anywhere.
Oh yeah. And the bike on the back with if you're using a kid ride shotgun to get someplace cool, you can throw their smallish run bike or whatever on your backpack without too much discomfort.
Yeah.
That helped us quite a bit. And we did one bike tour with Evelina, an overnight on Orcas Island. And that was a while ago. She was maybe 2 1/4. That went over really well, and she had such a fun time. Just that sense of adventure. Kids kind of thrive off the sense of whatever's going on in a situation. Mm-hmm. So if it's just we're going for an adventure, Evelina. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to be fun. She'll just like, ooh, I'm down for this.
Yeah.
And that went really well. So we were hoping to go to Croatia or Italy or do some kind of a cool Europe bike tour late summer, but none of that's happening right now. So next year we'll do something like that.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. I was thinking about like just going out to Post Canyon for an overnighter. That was our big trip. But Croatia, no big deal.
Well, it's just there's a lot of cool like gravel dirt roads right by the coast there that are low traffic, and it would be super cool. And it's beautiful, and the weather should be nicer there than at home.
Nice. Well, awesome. I think that covers like most of my knowledge about kid stuff. I'm sure there's other stuff. I do have an article on Jenson USA's blog, and you can easily find this if you just go to jensonusa.com, and you'll see right up there in kind of our navigation bar, it now says blog, and there's an article specifically on the Kids Ride Shotgun, but it does cover a bunch of the other products I've used, from bike trailers to the Yep mini seats and all that kind of stuff. And we'll probably add more as I go through my, teaching my kid to ride stuff. So, go ahead and check that out. Jeff continually has stuff going up on his site. I know you have some YouTube videos with your daughter that have been pretty fun, where you go camping and everything.
Man, that's been really cool, doing the overnight bike trips with her. Like, not bike tour, but we just hop in the van, spend the night in the van or whatever, do a bike ride either day. Those have been some of the best memories of being a dad.
Yeah, for sure. Just like super fun to get out there. And we hope this was a bit educational for you. We also hope that it maybe just inspired you or gave you some ideas of how to make, your kids' ride experience awesome. As I get older and arguably less capable, less capable than I want to dream. Like, I do just have to realize that at some point, like, I gotta push longevity for my riding, and I'm actually probably a better rider now than I've ever been in my life. But I also...
You have more experience now.
Yeah, but I'm also very acutely aware of things. Like, I have really bad shoulders, and so I have to, definitely roll into things with thought and whatever. But I realize my dream of being a pro snowboarder, pro mountain biker, or whatever is not really a reality, but that's okay. And I watch my kid... in a lot of ways with the same kind of enthusiasm that I had as a kid for these sports that I wanted to do, and just the dream of what was possible. And I can see that in my kid. And I sometimes have to quell that, where I'm like, okay, he doesn't have to be a pro mountain biker. But like, it's amazing watching the potential that you see there, and just the joy. I mean, like, the fact that my kid like legit comes up to me every day right now and is like, I want to go ride my bike. Let's go. And I'm like, yeah, I can't argue with you. Let's do that. It's such a joy to watch. So we hope this,
that's cool.
Gives you guys something to either aim for, or just, ways that you can inspire your kids, or maybe like all this is just stuff you're already doing, and that's fantastic. And we reinforce your awesome activities. So, kids are rad. And, Jenson has a hashtag that we use, and like a motto that's keep pedaling. And, I actually have been with my kid always using like the start pedaling stuff, because I think that's just as crucial, right? Like, get him on a bike, and it's like teaching him to fish, right? Teach a man to fish and he can feed himself or whatever. Well, in this case, it's teach a kid to ride, and he's going to have fun, or she's going to have fun for the rest of their life. And like, bikes are just so awesome, and such a great way to get around.
Very empowering tools for someone of that age.
Yeah, like before cars and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm just a huge fan. So anyways, I think that kind of wraps up everything with this podcast. And any last thoughts there, Jeff?
Man, enjoy it. These years fly. Like, I can't believe she's almost 4. Like, I remember she was just born practically. Yeah. So, yeah, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes. Sometimes even the minutes are long. But, but yeah, no, it goes so quick. And
the red shoes or the blue shoes? The green ones.
We don't have green ones.
I want green ones. No. Yeah, we all know those days.
Anyways, well, as always, be sure to check out Jeff's content throughout the interwebs, Instagram, YouTube being kind of your big source, and you have some cool videos coming out. We've got some more stuff going on, and hopefully, Jeff, as we grow this market of kid stuff, maybe we can get some bikes up to Evelina for doing some testing on bikes, and
here we go.
We can see what's what. But yeah, we're gonna be growing this area of kid stuff. We just, as more people in Jenson become parents, we're just realizing. The fit that it makes for the next generation of bikes and for the parents of bikers and the parents of those bikers and everything. And we can definitely fill in there. So we're stoked to have Norco on because that's obviously going to help expand our line quite a bit, but we'll be looking at a bunch of other options as well. So keep an eye out. You should see more products showing up there as time goes. But yeah, check out Jeff on all the Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all those things. Check out his own webpage, jeffkendallweed.com.
And I've got an athlete page on jensonusa.com.
Yeah.
You can check out the stuff I'm riding there. So thank you, Seth, for putting that page together.
Yeah, and that should keep you up to date on his videos or pretty close to it. Every time I make sure to hit the update button on the playlist, and I'm pretty good about that. So, and you can find that in the blog as well. You'll also find a lot of Jeff's reviews there, not just video ones, but Jeff does written content as well. He's quite prolific with the words.
Thanks.
So, yeah. Anyways, we hope this helps. Hope you have a good time. Stay safe and healthy during this craziness with COVID-19. And may you find joy and happiness with your friends and family in the best way you can while staying socially and responsibly distant.
Keep pedaling.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Keep pedaling.
I'll end it with keep pedaling. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Talk to y'all later.
Peace.